Hi everyone, Savannah here, and today we're drawing this adorable little chipmunk tucked away in a mossy den. I'm using my custom brushes, which are for free and linked down below in the description, as well as a free template and color palette that I used in this video so you can follow along. Let's go ahead and jump right in. The first thing I do is change that background, so go into layers, select background color, and in the palettes, go up until you find the Chipmunk color palette, and we're going to use dark cyan for the main background color. Now we're going to add in some lighter colors. We're doing a dark green next. I'm using that square blend brush, but make sure you add a new layer unlike I did here. So go into layers, select that plus and drag that new layer down below the outline layer and start adding in some of that dark green towards the middle section. I have the reference image for you in the bottom left that you can look to and refer to as we're doing all of these different sections, but I'm just adding it a little bit above where the chipmunk is, a little off center, so not directly center of the image, a little off center, more towards the direction of where that chipmunk is. And now let's go ahead and grab that yellow color. It's in the same row. It's a little bit more like a greenish yellow. And we're going to add that in the center of this dark green area we just added. Now start blending these areas out. You can grab these in between colors. So because we're using that square blend brush, it's pressure sensitive. And so it will blend very nicely with each other with the different colors. But you can still grab that in between color once it's blended by just holding your finger down on that color and then using that to blend these colors out even further. And I'm going to keep blending this color out until it's looking how I want it to look. So I'm going to keep picking up the three colors and blending them in between each other. So grabbing those in between colors and just keep blending it out, and then we'll move on to the next steps. And if you want to blend more seamlessly, you can just use light touches with that Apple Pencil because it is a pressure sensitive brush. It will blend very nicely. You can also technically do a Gaussian blur if you want to on the colors once you lay those colors down. I just kind of like doing it this way because I feel like it blends it a little bit more nicely with the Gaussian blur. It's a little too smooth, and I want a little bit of texture to that background, so that's why I'm blending this out with the brush versus with that. Sometimes I will use a Gaussian blur, but in this case I want to have a little bit more texture. Now let's go ahead and add a new layer. We're going to be adding in this mossy area on the top here that this chipmunk is hiding in, and it's also on top of this tree log here. So go ahead and grab that greenish color, that circle brush, and we're going to start tracing the shape of this mossy green area and then filling it in. Now, once you have this layer filled, let's go ahead and set to alpha lock. So just go into layers and select alpha lock. And then I actually am going to change the color of this. I'm going to go to adjustments, hue, saturation, and brightness. And I'm going to bring it down to an almost black color because what I'm going to do is put grass on top of this. And so I want there to be a little bit of darkness underneath. So grabbing that circle blend brush, we still have that green color selected. And we're going to start making these kind of tally marks on the surface of this area here that this mossy area is. I'm just going to keep adding these kind of telling marks to make it look a little bit like grass. Now I did turn alpha lock off because as I go towards the top edge of this, I want that grass to be above that black area. I don't want it to be confined to that shape. I want to have the little grass blades kind of sticking up. So that's why I turned that alpha lock off. And this will be a tedious process, but trust the process, it's going to look great when you're done. And you could use a larger brush if you wanted to. I just like using the smaller brush because I like the smaller look of the blades of grass here, this mossy area here. But if you wanted to use a larger brush for this, it will go a lot faster. It'll just look a little bit less defined as if you're doing the smaller brushes. And during this whole time, I did have the outline layer turned off, but I am going to turn it back on, especially going around this little kind of hidey hole that the chipmunk's in, so I can make sure that the grass goes around that area and we still have a little bit of this dark, almost black green color popping through, because that's where the chipmunk will be kind of coming out of. And I'm just doing little tiny brush strokes here. As you can see, I'm not doing long brush strokes because it looks a little bit more grass, a little bit more like this mossy texture. And so I'm just doing these little brush strokes across the whole surface here of this mossy area. And then as we go through the image, we will lighten up some areas. We'll make some highlights, some shadows, and things like that. So don't worry about too much using just the one color. We will add some definition to this area as we continue. And you'll notice I left a little bit of that dark green at the bottom here of this layer as well, because I want a little bit of shadow underneath of this mossy area. So I just kind of built that in by using the dark green color that we have already here, and then just did the grass marks on top. And I mentioned this is a tedious process, but we are almost done with this section. We just have the top right to do, and then like I mentioned, we'll add highlights and shadows as we continue on in this image. And I'm really liking how this is turning out, so I hope you are liking this as well. Again, you could use a bigger brush if you want to, just depends on your personal preference here. And now let's go ahead and grab that brighter yellow color, and we're going to add some highlights to the top of this mossy area. The light is coming down from the top, and so just keep that in mind as you're adding in the highlights. And we're using that same technique that we used for the green. And now I'm going to grab a very light version of the dark green that we've been using. So I'm just going to grab that dark green color, go to the disc and grab a lighter version of it so that I can start blending in this very bright limey green color with the darker mossy green layer that we have already down. And then I'm also going to use that as a highlight in some of the areas that's not directly underneath where this light is shining down. So I'm just kind of creating areas where there might be some shadows. You can kind of play around with this if you want. I'm just going to kind of add some texture and some variation to this so it's not just all one color. And I'm going to do the same thing over on the left as well. I'm just kind of adding in these kind of dips and hills and things like that in this area so it doesn't look like it's just one flat surface. And then I'm going to pull in a little bit of the limey green color on the left side as well because it is more under that light than the side on the right. So I'm going to grab in some of that lime green color and bring some of that lightness to this area. And the reason I'm doing this technique of the brushstroke similar to how we laid it down, and yes, it is very tedious, but it's going to look more natural. If you did the other, which we've done in other videos, if you did the technique of adding a new layer using clipping mask and then doing a blend mode over top of it, it's going to look very flat because it's not going to pull in the depth of shadows or these other colors that are kind of pulling up underneath. It's going to look um, again very flat, and so that's why I'm doing it this way because I can give it the texture and the highlights that I want without it kind of blending in. So for instance, there's darker areas underneath. If you did the clipping mask, those dark areas are going to be lightened, which I don't want. I want to have these very dark and very bright areas, and so that's why I'm kind of doing this technique. It does work to do clipping mask for other objects, but because there's a lot of texture in this area, it's better just to do it the way that we're doing it here. And now let's go ahead and add a new layer underneath of this mossy area. And we're going to just add in a base color for this log here. So I'm just going to do that light grayish yellow green color. We will build up on this in a bit to make it look more like a tree branch or log. So for now, we're just going to add in this color. I'm just using the square brush for this just to fill this color in. We'll add details in a little bit. Now, if you haven't already, create a new layer above the mossy layer that we have, and we are going to fill in the shape of the chipmunk now. So grab that circle brush, turn your outline layer back on, and we're going to start tracing it. Now, it might be hard to see because of the mossy layer. If it's too hard for you to see the shape of the chipmunk, you can turn that mossy layer off so you can still see the outline. But if you're able to see, just power through and you could trace the chipmunk here, and then we'll add details to the chipmunk, we'll add details to the log, and then we'll fine tune anything else, add some more highlights, more glowiness to this image, and then we'll be done. And now usually with shapes, you can drag and drop them in when you have this outline done, as long as the outline's kind of closed in. You can drag and drop that color in, but the way my brushes work, it doesn't quite work perfectly. It will give a little bit of an edge on the inside of that outline because of the texture of the brushes. So I usually just manually fill this in. A little tedious, but it does make it feel a little bit like you are doing traditional art, which I like doing. And now we're going to do an alpha lock on this chipmunk layer, and we're going to start adding in some of the colors. So I'm going to grab this brown color. I'm going to use the circle blend brush. I'm going to start adding in the brown around the top of the head here, and then around the sides as well. And I'm kind of doing these short little brush strokes to mimic kind of hairs on the surface of the chipmunk. So that's what I'm kind of doing here. I'm placing a lot of the colors. We can go over it several times with these other colors as well to make it look a little bit more like a hair texture. But for now, I'm just kind of placing the colors where I want them to go for this chipmunk. And I kind of drew lines of where, on that outline of where this brown color is going to go. So you can follow that if you want. You can change it a little bit if you want to as well. This is just the way that I am doing it for my chipmunk. But again, feel free to tweak it and change it if you want. And remember to turn that outline layer off and on as you're adding in these colors because it's not going to show you if you have that outline layer on. It's not going to show you accurately what the final image is going to look like, because that's going to be over top of areas that you're coloring in, so you might be missing spots. So I turn it off and on as I add in color. So right now I'm adding in a lighter brown color on top of the head. I'll turn off the outline layer just to see how things are looking as I build up more of these colors. So again, just kind of turn it on, off and on as you're building up these colors. I am going back over this area with the dark brown. It's going to be a lot of going back and forth with these colors to keep building up that look and making it look more like hair. Now I am going to turn the alpha lock off on that chipmunk layer, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But for now, create a new layer, set that to clipping mask, grab that dark grayish red color, and we're going to add the eye of the chipmunk here, and we're going to use a circle brush for that. And now let's go ahead and add the mouth. I did grab a darker red color, but I didn't like how that looks. I'm going to grab, I think it's like an orangish color. I'm going to grab that and do the mouth here as well. And I'm going to grab that dark brown and bring that brown down closer to the nose as well on top. So I'm going to go tweak that and then tweak some of the other areas as well around the face. And the reason I turn that outline layer off on the chipmunk layer is so that when I'm adding in the hair around the edge, I get the little hair texture that I'm looking for. So it was a little too clean if I went with just the outline that we created. But if you go over it with the alpha lock turned off, you can get these little hair textures at the edge of the shape that we just created. So I want that texture. I want it to look a little bit more realistic and not just a straight line. And now I'm going to go in with another color and just build up the texture on this chipmunk. I want it to look like there are hairs on this chipmunk, so I'm going to grab this light yellow color. I'm going to go around in different areas and just lighten up some spots. You can just kind of do it how you want to do in this area, just kind of adding in the yellow in some spots, and they'll blend it out with that base color that we have as well. And I'm kind of going over the entire body area here because there's nothing really contrasting colors against this creamy color that we put down originally. So I'm just kind of going over this to give it that hair-like texture, and then we'll keep building up on it so we won't have it just be this yellow and this cream, but I'm using the cream and yellow to kind of create that hair texture that I'm looking for. And now I'm going to pull in a grayish yellow green color here just to give it more definition, and also because the lower of the chipmunk here, the more it's going to be in shadow. So I'm just going to add in some of that gray color, and I'm also going to turn it back on to alpha lock because I don't want to go over those lines anymore. I have the outer area kind of colored in, so now I just want to go over what we currently have with that color. I don't want to push those lines out further. And now I'm going to grab a yellow orange color and I'm going to add that to the top of the chipmunk's head here. Again, I'm just building up a lot of the colors, giving a lot more dimension by pulling in multiple different colors. It's going to make it look a little bit more realistic. So I'm just grabbing the yellow orange color. I'm grabbing more yellow colors. Again, just building up to give it more texture and some more dimension. Now let's go ahead and use that same yellow color we just grabbed and put it around the body of the chipmunk as well. And then we can grab that light yellow color that we used for the body and just start bringing those gray tones down just a little bit. They're starting to get a little too gray in the body, which is not what I want. I want there to be a little bit gray, but not too much. So I'm going to bring that down a little bit with this yellow color. And now I'm going to work on the lighter stripes near the eye. So I'm going to grab that yellow color and I'm going to add in some of that color to that area because there's not a lot of variety there. So it looks very solid, it looks very one-dimensional, and I want it to look a little bit more interesting. So I'm going over that area with this color to give it that hair-like texture that we've been doing throughout. And now it's a lot of just building up the fur here, adding in a lot of the different colors that you want. You don't have to use the same colors that I use for my chipmunk. You absolutely can if you want to. But I'm just going to keep pulling in a lot of these different colors, building up the body here. And then I'm also going to work on the inner ear here. We'll work on the eye and touching up those details as well. And then we'll move on to, we have the tree log stump that we still want to work on. So we'll go to that towards the end and then give it a little bit of a glow at the end as well. And on that layer with the eye and the nose, I'm just going to bring down that hair a little bit over the nose to make it look a little more natural because it looks very stark, that line that we have for the nose and mouth. So I'm just bringing in those colors just a little bit to blend it out. And then I'm going to grab a light white color for the eye for that reflection. So I'm going to grab one of the light grayish white colors. I'm going to still use that circle blend brush, but I'm going to add in a very bright, stark dot and then very lightly a reflective line next to it. And now let's work on the ears. I'm grabbing a dark brown color and I'm going to add some dark brown to the inner left part of the ear here. We're also going to pull in some of the more orangey reddish tones as well, but I'm kind of defining the shape of this ear first, and then we'll build up the inner part with those more red toned colors. Now go ahead and grab that reddish orange color and we're going to add that a little bit to the inside. We're not doing the full thing in that dark red color. It's mostly just going to be at the tip because that's going to be more in the shade or the shadow of the light. It's not going to be directly in the light, whereas this orangish color is going to be more in the light, just the way that I'm envisioning how this ear is turned. So I'm making it a little bit brighter towards the bottom and darker on the upper part as if it's kind of turned away from that light. And then I'm just adding a little bit of detail on the inside, not much. I want to keep this pretty simplistic, but I want to give it a little bit of texture there. And then I'm going to touch up a little bit more of the hairs around the ear to blend it in, similar to what we did with the nose and the mouth. And now I'm going to grab that light yellow color and I'm going to do that on the top of the ear here. And then I'm also going to carry that on the top of the head because that's going to be where that light, that glow is going to be hitting. So I want to brighten that those areas up a little bit. Now on a new layer above the chipmunk layers, I'm going to start working on the mushrooms. So we're going to use that red color that we used on the inner part of the ear for the tops of the mushrooms, and then we'll use some of the lighter colors for the bottom of the mushrooms. But for now, let's go ahead and use the dark red orange color. Make sure that outline layer is turned on, and we're going to just fill in these shapes with this dark red orange color. Now I am using the circle brush for this, and I did actually keep these all on the same layer, even though there is some overlap. I just did it all in the same layer, so I'll show you kind of how I worked around that. There's not that many mushrooms, so I didn't feel like we needed to do too many layers for the overlap mushroom tops. And now we have the outline complete for all of the mushrooms that we want to include. So let's go ahead and fill in the shapes of these. And now set that to alpha lock, and let's go ahead and grab that orange-ish color, and we're going to add in some lighter shades to these tops and the mushrooms. I'm keeping this mushroom here on the top, so I'm going to go in front of the other mushroom because they're all in the same layer. You just have to be mindful of that any colors you add, it's going to blend into each other. So I'm just going to do the mushroom on the right side there in front, and then very carefully around the mushroom on the left, add in that highlight, and I'm going to do that for all these mushrooms. Now on a new layer below the mushroom top layer, we're going to add the bottom. So I'm grabbing that yellow orangish color, that circle brush, and then I'm going to add in the mushroom bottoms here. And once you're done with that, go ahead and set that layer to alpha lock. We'll add a little bit of detail. We're not going too crazy on the details for these mushrooms, but we're going to add a little bit. I'm going to grab a grayish color, that circle blend brush. I'm just going to add a little bit of variety to the mushroom stems here. Now grabbing that light yellow color, we're just going to add a little bit to the right side. Again, kind of where that light is shining down. So the mushrooms on the left, I'm adding it to the right side there. Mushrooms on the right, I'll add it to the left because that light is coming from the left for them and the right for the ones on the left. And then one more thing, I'm just adding a little bit of this grassy leaf thing here on the left. I just grabbed one of those yellow-green colors. Using that circle blend brush still, I just added it on the top there just to give it a little bit more variety so it's not just this mossy area. I want a little bit more plant life. And now I do want to bring some of that grass in front of the chipmunk because or the moss because I want them to kind of be tucked behind it. So on that same layer that you added that kind of plant life on the left, I'm just going to grab the same green grass color that's in front of the chipmunk here or below the chipmunk. I'm just going to add a little bit on top of it here with that circle blend brush because again, I want it to look like it's kind of tucked back into this hidey hole. Now we have everything complete except for the tree stump down below. So I'm grabbing that gray yellowish color, that dark gray color. I grabbed the square dark here, but I'm actually going to end up using the square blend brush for this. And I'm going to start adding in some texture to this tree, whether it's a stump or a log or however you want to do it, or branch. So I'm just going to add some texture here and there, just placing it. All of my lines, I'm making them horizontal because that's kind of the way that bark goes, and so I don't want to go vertical with it when it looked natural. So make sure when you're placing these lines you're going horizontal and just pull in a lot of different colors. I'm pulling in blues, I'm pulling in grays, we will pull in more browns as well, but I'm just going to pull in a bunch of different colors, keep building up these layers. I'm grabbing this light yellowish white color and I'm doing a little bit of shorter areas here. I'm not doing long drawn out lines. I'm just kind of doing these short little stumpy areas because that's how bark looks. There's not a lot of long pieces. There are, but there's not. You have a lot of pieces that are maybe chipped off and things like that. So I'm just trying to mimic the look of bark on this piece of wood. And I'm grabbing that dark black color, bringing the size of the brush down. I'm gonna add some lines. So again, we'll build this up, but I'm just kind of adding these cracks that are in the side of this branch or this log that's fallen over, and then just kind of building up underneath of where that mossy layer is a little bit, just to give it a little bit more texture, a little bit more variance, just to give it something a little bit more interesting to look at. And you can place these lines wherever you want. This is just where I'm kind of placing it. You can go more or less depending on what you want. I'm just kind of breaking off these little, these black lines. I'm just kind of breaking them off, building up certain areas, doing fewer areas in other sections just because that's how I want it. And then I'm going to make it a little bit darker on the bottom half of this. We'll just say it's a branch, a bottom half of this tree branch, because I want it to be in the shadow because that light's not hitting it. So just darkening up a lot of these little areas here, but then we'll brighten it up. I'll grab some browns in here as well, just to lighten up. I'll grab some of that lighter, almost white yellowish color and lighten some of these spots, but I wanted to tone it down a little bit before I did that. And now on that same layer that we did the plants on and that mossy spot in front of the chipmunk, I'm going to add a little bit of plant life on this tree branch because I just want a little bit more variance. I want a little bit more green pulled down in there. So I'm just adding it where those dark spots are, as if they're kind of growing in between these cracks. I grabbed this green color, I'm just adding that in. I'll add a little bit of a color variation, but I'm trying to keep this again pretty simplistic. I don't want to overshadow the chipmunk here, so I'm just adding some dark colors here and there. And now one of the final things I want to do is add a little bit of a glow to the kind of where that light's coming. So I'm grabbing that yellow color, the soft brush, and on a new layer above everything else, we're going to add a little bit of this glow coming down directly on top of the chipmunk. And now let's go ahead and change the blend mode for that. To do that, you just go into layers, you click the N, and that will pull up the blend modes. I am going to do screen for this, but there's a lot of other really great options. A lot of times I also use overlay. Feel free to do whichever one you like, but for me, I'm going to do screen. And then I'm going to take that same brush that we already have selected and start adding more glow to other areas of this image. One thing to keep in mind if you're adding glow to other areas on this image is that it's not going to be as bright as it is right above the chipmunk. So as you're adding it around the edges, just go in with a softer touch. You don't want to go too heavy-handed. It's not going to look natural unless that's where you put your glow. I put it directly above the chipmunk, so everything closer to where the chipmunk is and where that glow is, it's going to be brighter, and everything further away is going to be a little bit more muted, not as bright. And I usually turn the opacity layer down on this, so I'm going to turn it to about 40%. That's what I prefer. You can go a little bit brighter. That's when I end up going 60%, but I usually around 50% is my preferred glowiness. And then I'm just going to go in and erase a few pieces here and there. So it went a little outside of the shape of the chipmunk here. That's just because we're not doing a clippy mask against that because it's glow over the whole image. So I'm just going to go in, add in or remove a little bit of this glow just to make it look a little bit more natural, and then we're done. And with that, our chipmunk drawing is complete. Thank you so much for following along. I hope you had as much fun as I did. If you did, please feel free to like this video and also subscribe if you want to see future videos just like this. I look forward to seeing everybody in the next video.